there's this term, this neurological condition that sort of comes with FTD and other types of dementia as well, called anosognosia, where your brain can't identify what is happening to it. Bruce never tapped in. He never connected the dots that he had this disease, and I'm really happy about that.
Bruce Willis was once a global symbol of strength and success. From Die Hard in 1988 to The Sixth Sense in 1999, he embodied the Hollywood ideal: decisive, witty, and unbreakable. His public image was tied to hundreds of millions of dollars in box office revenue, a relentless work schedule, and a famous, seemingly happy family. Few people remember that he was once a boy, raised in a military family, constantly moving from place to place, who overcame a childhood stutter to step onto the stage and eventually conquer the world of cinema. But behind the spotlight were quiet, hidden wounds. At the age of 70, everything was finally revealed. And the true story behind Bruce Willis left the public stunned. Background and the health tragedy of Bruce Willis. The first signs did not arrive as a sudden collapse. They appeared quietly, easing their way into Bruce Willis's daily life. Around 2019 to 2021 on set, tasks that once felt automatic began to require effort. Lines were harder to recall. Conversations slowed. Moments of hesitation replaced the sharp timing he was known for. Scenes sometimes needed to be repeated, not because of performance, but because the words would not come as easily as before. At first, no one thought something serious was wrong. In an industry shaped by loud sets and long hours, changes like these were easy to explain away. Age, fatigue, years of exposure to noise. These seemed like reasonable answers, even within the family. The concern came gradually. Bruce knew what he wanted to say, but finding the right words became increasingly difficult. Familiar conversations no longer flowed naturally. In March 2022, the family shared that he had been diagnosed with aphasia. The diagnosis gave shape to what had been happening. Aphasia affects the ability to speak and understand language. And for an actor whose life had been built on dialogue, it changed everything. Soon after, Bruce stepped away from acting. His career did not end with a final role, but with the quiet acceptance that his health had to come first. As time passed, doctors continued to look deeper. In February 2023, the family confirmed a more complete diagnosis: frontotemporal dementia, or FTD. This condition slowly affects the parts of the brain responsible for language, behavior, and personality. There is no cure, only ways to manage the symptoms and protect quality of life. Now, in his 70s, Bruce remains physically present. He recognizes his loved ones and shares moments with them, though in a different way. One part of his condition, known as anosognosia, means he is not fully aware of his illness. In some ways, this shields him from fear. In other ways, it makes caregiving more complex. The change has been gradual, not sudden. What has been lost has faded slowly, piece by piece. And in that quiet progression, Bruce Willis's life has shifted into a new reality, one his family continues to face with patience, care, and love. The response of Emma Heming Willis, the primary caregiver. When the diagnosis first became clear, Emma Heming Willis entered a period she later described as deeply isolating. Between 2022 and 2023, the medical explanations came quickly, but emotional support did not. Doctors explained what was happening to Bruce's brain, outlined what could not be fixed, and then moved on. Emma was left to process the reality alone. She has said that in those early months, she felt incredibly lonely and unsupported. Not because people did not care, but because very few understood what it meant to suddenly become a caregiver for a spouse with a progressive brain disease. At the time, Emma was in her mid-40s, raising two young daughters, Mabel and Evelyn. Their family life before the diagnosis had been structured but joyful. School routines, shared meals, and time together that felt stable. That stability disappeared quietly. The shift was not dramatic, but constant. Emma found herself managing appointments, learning medical terminology, and absorbing information that carried no hopeful ending. In January 2026, on the podcast Conversations with Cam, she spoke openly about that period for the first time. She admitted that part of her felt relief knowing Bruce was not fully aware of his condition. His lack of insight spared him fear. At the same time, it placed the emotional weight entirely on her. She had to hold the knowledge, protect her children from it, and still show up each day as a calm, present parent. The contrast between her internal exhaustion and the normalcy she tried to maintain at home defined those years. Over time, Emma began to redirect her grief into action. Rather than retreating from the public eye, she chose to engage with it in a controlled, purposeful way. She became increasingly vocal about the realities of caregiving, especially for families dealing with frontotemporal dementia. Her focus shifted from privacy to education. She spoke not as a celebrity spouse, but as someone navigating daily uncertainty. One of her most visible efforts was organizing an art exhibition at Christie's in Beverly Hills to raise awareness and funds connected to FTD research and caregiver support. The event was practical rather than symbolic. It created a space to talk about the disease without sensationalism. Emma emphasized that dementia should not automatically be framed as a story of disappearance. She spoke instead about adaptation. In her words, the family was not losing Bruce day by day, but learning how to move forward with him, adjusting their expectations and their ways of connecting. This perspective became central to how she spoke about their life. She rejected the idea that their home was defined only by decline. She described moments of presence, recognition, and shared calm as equally real as moments of loss. The illness reshaped their relationship, but it did not erase it. Eventually, Emma made one of the most difficult decisions of her life, transitioning Bruce into a specialized care facility, which she referred to as his second home. The choice was not driven by distance or abandonment, but by necessity. The level of care Bruce required had grown beyond what one person could safely manage alone. The facility offered structure, medical support, and consistency. While still allowing the family to remain deeply involved, Emma has shared that the transition brought relief, mixed with guilt. The burden of constant vigilance eased, but the emotional weight did not disappear. What surprised her was how well Bruce adjusted. The environment reduced confusion. Their daughters were able to visit without fear or disruption. The family found a new rhythm, less frantic, more sustainable, despite the ongoing grief. Emma has been clear that joy still exists in their daily lives. She has spoken about laughter, small routines, and moments of quiet connection that remain meaningful. These moments do not erase the tragedy, but they coexist with it. In her public statements, Emma has consistently returned to one key message: anosognosia is a symptom, not denial. Bruce is not refusing to see his illness. His brain simply cannot recognize it. By explaining this distinction, she hopes to reduce judgment toward people living with dementia and toward those caring for them. Education, for her, has become a form of protection for families like hers and for others who will one day face the same reality. Through all of this, Emma Hemming Willis has not presented herself as resilient in a dramatic sense. Instead, her strength appears in repetition, showing up, learning, adjusting, and continuing. Her response to Bruce's illness is not defined by grand gestures, but by steady commitment in a situation that offers no resolution. only responsibility. The response of Demi Moore and the daughters. A family holding together. When Bruce Willis's illness became public, one of the most striking aspects was not distance, but closeness. Demi Moore, his former wife, remained deeply involved in his life long after their divorce in 2000. Over the years, their relationship had evolved into one built on mutual respect and shared responsibility as parents. When Bruce's health began to decline in 2022, that foundation became essential. Demi described the experience of supporting him as a journey filled with challenges, but also with love. She did not frame herself as returning out of obligation. Instead, she emphasized continuity. Bruce was still family. She spoke often about gratitude for Emma Heming Willis, publicly acknowledging her strength and leadership as the primary caregiver in interviews and social posts. Demi made it clear that this was not a divided family managing a crisis separately, but a unified one responding together. She remained present during key moments. Birthdays, holidays, and Father's Day were still observed, even if they looked different than before. These gatherings were quieter and smaller, but intentional. Demi acknowledged the pain of watching someone she loved change, but she consistently redirected attention toward compassion. Since 2022, her focus has been less on loss and more on how love continues to exist alongside it. That same tension between grief and connection has shaped the experiences of Bruce's daughters, particularly the three he shares with Demi. For them, the illness has unfolded during adulthood, when memory and identity are already deeply anchored. Their responses have been personal, public, and at times raw. Rumer Willis, the eldest, marked her father's 70th birthday in 2025 by sharing a short video. The message was simple and direct. She focused on gratitude, love, and presence rather than illness. Her post did not explain his condition or describe his limitations. Instead, it affirmed that being together still mattered. The choice reflected a careful balance, acknowledging reality without letting it define the relationship. Scout Willis has been more open about the emotional weight. She has spoken about feeling deep sadness and wishing circumstances were different. At the same time, she has shared that she sees her father often and tries to find meaning in small moments. For Scout, joy is no longer tied to conversation or advice, but to familiarity, sitting together, listening to music, being present without expectation. Tallulah Willis has described the illness as a slow realization. At first, she believed her father was simply losing his hearing. That explanation felt manageable. Over time, as the changes became clearer, she recognized that it was something deeper. She later called that period the beginning of grief. For Tallulah, adaptation has meant learning to release who her father was while staying connected to who he is now. She has spoken about therapy, reflection, and the effort required to stay emotionally grounded through that process. Together, the three sisters represent a shared generational experience. They are adults watching a parent change in irreversible ways. Their grief is not sudden. It stretches over years. It appears in waves. And yet, none of them describe walking away. Their presence remains consistent, even as the nature of their relationship shifts. For Bruce's two younger daughters, Mabel and Evelyn, the experience is different. They are growing up with their father's illness as part of their normal understanding of family life. They do not remember him as a public figure or an action star. They know him through routine and familiarity. Emma has spoken about how the girls have adapted to their father's own way of connecting. Visits to his care facility are part of their lives, structured to feel safe and calm. The tragedy for them lies in timing. They are learning about illness and loss earlier than most children. but they are also shielded. Emma has worked carefully to protect their emotional well-being, offering age-appropriate explanations and emphasizing stability. The girls are not burdened with responsibility. They are allowed to remain children across all of these relationships. One theme remains constant: mutual support. No single family member carries the situation alone. Decisions are shared. Emotions are acknowledged rather than dismissed. The family does not present itself as heroic or inspirational. Instead, they model something quieter: cooperation in the face of long-term hardship. What holds them together is not denial of the tragedy, but acceptance of it. Bruce Willis's illness has changed every relationship around him, yet rather than fracture the family, it has reinforced their commitment to one another. In that sense, the loss has not erased connection, it has reshaped it, forcing each person to find new ways to show up and to stay. The broader impact and the family's shared voice. In 2023, the family of Bruce Willis released a public statement that was both restrained and revealing. They described the moment of diagnosis as painful, but also clarifying. After years of uncertainty, the confirmation of frontotemporal dementia brought a sense of relief, not because the outcome was easier, but because it finally had a name. The statement thanked the public for its support and asked for understanding as the family adjusted to a new reality. That message marked a shift. The family moved from private coping to measured openness by sharing Bruce's condition. They helped draw attention to a disease that remains widely misunderstood. FTD is rare, often misdiagnosed, and lacks the public recognition associated with other forms of dementia. The family acknowledged this gap directly. Their decision to speak publicly was not about visibility for its own sake, but about making the condition less invisible for others. By 2026, their tone remained consistent. Updates focused less on medical detail and more on connection. The family emphasized that they were moving forward together and encouraged other families facing similar diagnoses to seek support early. Their message was not framed as advice, but as reassurance. They made clear that caregiving is complex, isolating, and ongoing, and that no one should feel they must navigate it alone. Beyond awareness, Bruce Willis's story has reshaped how many people understand illness and identity. His career once symbolized physical strength, sharp control, and resilience under pressure. The progression of his disease revealed the fragility beneath those traits. It challenged the assumption that success or discipline can protect against neurological decline. In this context, his legacy has taken on a quieter meaning. The focus is no longer on box office numbers or iconic roles, but on the human reality behind them. His story has encouraged conversations about brain health, early symptoms, and the emotional cost of dementia, not just for patients, but for families. The tragedy of Bruce Willis's illness is undeniable, but its broader impact lies in what it has made visible. Through transparency and restraint, his family has turned a private loss into a shared point of recognition. In doing so, they have reminded the public that even the strongest public figures are vulnerable, and that awareness, empathy, and support matter long after the spotlight fades. Conclusion: the journey of Bruce Willis over the past several years has unfolded slowly, marked by medical answers, personal loss, and constant adjustment. What began as subtle changes in language became a diagnosis that reshaped every part of his life. For his family, the progression from uncertainty to clarity brought pain, but also direction. They learned not how to fix what could not be fixed, but how to stay present within it. Throughout this process, the defining force has been connection. Emma Heming Willis carried the weight of daily care. Demi Moore remained a steady presence rooted in shared history. Their daughters, both grown and young, adapted in ways shaped by their age and understanding. None of them escaped grief, but none of them stepped away. Love did not remove the tragedy. It made it survivable. There is hope in that response. Not the kind that promises recovery, but the kind that insists on dignity, patience, and shared responsibility. By speaking openly, the Willis family has helped bring attention to frontotemporal dementia and the families who live with it in silence. Their story encourages earlier awareness, greater compassion, and better support for caregivers who often feel unseen. In the end, this is not only the story of a famous actor facing illness, it is the story of a man surrounded by people who continue to show up, even when the future offers no resolution. Behind the public image was always a human life. And in this biographical tragedy, that truth becomes impossible to ignore.